Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to my Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building the world of Willow Creek, which is one of the base game worlds, and I'm going to be building a house for an uncle who is raising his nephew. So this house ends up having 2 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms, and it's built on a 20 by 15 lot. I feel like it's been forever since I last built on a 20 by 15 lot. It's probably not been that long. I think it's been only a few months or something, but I don't know, I just feel like it's been a really long time since I've actually sat down and built on a lot this small. But this week I thought it'd be really fun to sit down and build a house for a family line and a kind of like a storyline that I don't think I've ever decorated for before, and that is an uncle who is raising his nephew. Recently I've been doing quite a bit of work on my save file, kind of like off camera. I've just been doing a ton more townie makeovers. I've been creating loads of new families, and also actually I've been doing a lot of neighborhood makeovers as well. So you know, sometimes when you load into a neighborhood, I'm also trying to change how the neighborhoods look in my save so they feel a little bit more realistic, and I also want there to be like dotted about activities in the different surrounding neighborhoods that aren't connected to a lot. And so yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of work on my save file, but in the process of creating all these different families, I realised that a family dynamic that I haven't really explored that much for my save is an uncle raising his nephew. And so I thought, well, why don't I sit down and build a house kind of towards that idea? And yeah, that is exactly what I did, and I really hope you guys like it. But anyway, moving on from that and getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself and also what I'm doing right now. So you can see that I've already built the main shell for the house, and now I'm just coming in and figuring out the wallpapering and the flooring. Now for this build, you can visibly see the next door neighbour's lot and kind of like what it looks like. This isn't my save file that I'm building in. Basically the way that I am doing all my different save file builds, I have my save file and then I have about 20 backups of it because I don't want to lose it. But then also I have a building save, which is kind of like a replica of all the different houses that I've got in my save. And so as I'm building this house, you might notice that I keep on like spinning the camera towards the left because I want it to kind of match the vibe I went for the neighbouring houses to this one. Now where I'm building in the world of Willow Creek, it's officially called Foundry Cove. Like that's the official neighbourhood name. I always just refer to it as the starter neighbourhood in The Sims 4, or at least the starter neighbourhood in the world of Willow Creek, because I remember when I first got The Sims 4, no matter the family that I was creating, I'd always get my Sims to start off in this neighbourhood because I think there's like 2 different starter homes or something, and I always play here. And to be honest, even now when I start a brand new save file, if I'm not playing in the world of Henfield and Bagley, Brunton Bay or Copperdale, I am playing in the world of Willow Creek. I just love it. I know it's old, 10 years old to be exact, but there's just something so nice about the way the Sims team used to make some of the older worlds in the game. And I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but I feel like now with the most recent DLC releases where we do get a brand new world, I just don't feel like I'm as this is going to sound really cheesy, but I don't feel like I'm as immersed in the gameplay because everything is so spread out from one another. And then also I feel like a lot of the time there will be some like decorative houses right next door to your Sims house, and like I want my Sims to have neighbours. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like my Sims being pals with next door and inviting them over for like dinner one night in the week and stuff. And so I always find myself playing in this neighbourhood to start off a brand new save file. But with this in mind, I have kind of decided that for this particular neighbourhood in this world, I want to make it feel a little bit more of a lower income area. I'm trying to do this anyway in different like neighborhoods in some of the different worlds. So for example, my plan for, you know, the world of Oasis Springs, the other base game world, I want to make it so the area that Johnny Zest lives in by default is predominantly, is that how you say that word? I don't know, I never say it, but I always hear other people say it. But I want to make it so for the main part that is going to be like a trailer neighbourhood or very low income houses, and it's kind of the same for this neighbourhood. I'm just thinking, when you create a brand new sim in cast, and if you are like me and you always start out in Willow Creek and in this neighbourhood in particular, I don't want your Sims to move into a small little bare bone starter house and then their next door neighbours have the whole 9 yards, like proper fancy houses, because to me, it just doesn't make sense for realistic purposes. I feel like when you do start out, maybe you will be in a bit of a lower income area. And so, yeah, I have decided that for this neighbourhood and this area in particular, I want to make it so the houses they're a little bit smaller, they're a little bit more realistic, they're still really nice, and I still love them, but I just don't want them to be as big and fancy. But anyway, besides the point, moving over and actually getting back to the build, as you can see, I did all the wallpaper and stuff, and I've already done the front landscaping. For the landscaping, I didn't want to have loads of different flowers and loads of different types of plants. I tried to keep it quiet, minimal, but I really like it. I feel like this is somewhat realistic because not everyone has like perfectly immaculate gardens and like manicured front lawns and stuff, and so for the most part I decided to use a lot of different bushes. I think I placed down like 1 or 2 different trees, and then the rest of it is mainly just overgrown grass. But something that I did do is, you can see that I've already placed down some telephone poles on the right hand side of the build. I'm just kind of coming in now and finishing up how this little area is going to look. But basically, for the house that is neighbouring this one, I had previously placed these down onto the lot itself, and because I wanted to make sense, I decided to place down some telephone poles and then also some wires connected to them, and just make it look like this house has somewhat electricity. I say that I don't even end up connecting the telephone poles and the wires to the house itself, but my plan, and hopefully I can do it, but my plan for when this neighbourhood is complete in my save is I'm going to take all the different telephone poles and all the different wires kind of like connecting in between them, and then basically go around probably the front portion of the build and kind of connect them all up. You can do this with the tool mod, by the way, and so far this is how I've been doing kind of like neighbourhood changes and environment changes in my save. I've just been using the tool mod and just taking the objects off the lot and like moving them about and just like scattering about loads of random like objects for Sims to interact with. But yeah, that is my plan, and maybe when I do that, I'll then eventually be able to connect the houses to the wire. If you're curious, by the way, the telephone poles themselves, we do have some in the Sims 4 base game. I'm not a massive fan of the way that them ones look, but the ones that I've used in this build, they are from the Snowy Escape live edit menu. But then the little wires that I've used to kind of like connect the poles together, that is from Journey to Batuu. And yeah, I just used the tool mod to kind of size up the wire to get it to be the exact size that I needed for the distance in between the 2 poles, and then just popped it on. But now either way, moving over, you can see that I've now moved on and I've started coming in and decorating the little tiny back garden. So something that I've already done in this back garden, you can kind of see the trellises on the left hand side, is I made it so on the upstairs level of kind of like this little back porch section, the teenager of this household, because by the way, and I will get on shortly and kind of give you a little bit of an overview for the Sims that I imagine living in this house, but the teenager in this household, if they ever did want to sneak out of the house, they can do so, because on the upstairs level, I placed down these windows, which, to be fair, it's on the upstairs level. I use these windows throughout the whole entire build. You can see that I placed one down, kind of like by the back door over here, but these are the windows that we got from the high school years expansion pack, and your Sims can climb in and out of these windows. So basically, if a teenager gets invited to maybe go out late at night, they can sneak through the window, or maybe they've been, say for example, grounded and they're not allowed to do anything, but your Sim really wants to go to prom, you can just say, yeah, alright, I'm going to bed, and then your Sims can, sneak out the window. But I placed down a window in the top portion, and then I used a live edit fence to make it look like there was something kind of like fencing off or sectioning off the top balcony bit, because basically you can't place down a fence and then get your Sims to climb over that. The window is a lovely idea, but sometimes the way that it actually functions isn't the most practical for gameplay, and so I placed down a live edit fence on the top portion, so even though it looks like it's a fence and you can't climb over it, your Sims can. I use a live edit fence and they just completely go through it, and they don't even realise that it's there basically. But moving over, you can see that I've now revisited the front portion of the build, and I decided that I wanted it to look like the truck that I use the tool mod to kind of like move off the lot has some sort of signage on. And when I was decorating this truck portion, I was kind of then starting to really think about the different Sims that would be living in this house. I already knew coming into this build that I wanted it to be for an uncle and for their nephew, but I didn't really have the most thought out plan for them and kind of like their individual personalities and their jobs and, well, I say their jobs, the uncle's job and stuff. But when I was doing the little truck portion, I don't know if you would have seen, but I moved objects aside and it looks to be some sort of wheel, like a ship wheel. I think we got it from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack, and it does make sense because Cats and Dogs is a very like coastal kind of world. But I was thinking it kind of looks like some sort of little clog, and then once I had that idea, I was thinking that, or maybe the uncle that lives in this house and who owns the house is a mechanic, and he's got his little like mechanic shop, or maybe he's got a workshop that people can come and deliver their cars to, and he works for them, and the truck that he drives kind of has the branding of it. Now I will say, if you did download this build of the gallery, unfortunately the truck and the little like logo either side of it won't come with the build, because I basically took them objects and moved them away from the lot guidelines, and so it won't be attached to the lot on the gallery. But it's something quite easy to re-add in if you do like the idea. But again, I'm kind of, for my save file, I'm trying to decorate the neighbourhood as well, and so I kind of put it there as almost like a reference point of how I want this little section in my actual save file to look. And so unfortunately it won't come up with the build, but I mean, if you're someone that really wants it in the build, let me know. I can always upload a little room onto my gallery of the truck, because I did slightly rotate it. I don't know if you would have seen. It might be a little bit confusing because I'm aware that it's not currently on the screen, but I tried to rotate the truck to make it look like it's been parked slightly on the curb, so like the right hand wheels both back and front are kind of on the curb, but then the left hand wheels are on the road. You know, sometimes when you park outside your house and you kind of like have to go up the curb a little bit, and so I did rotate it. And then if you want to, let me know, and I can always upload it onto the gallery, and then you could always gravity pull the truck and the little logo off the lot. The way that you use the gravity pull feature is with the tool mod, and all you've got to do is you highlight it so they go all green, and then if you press alt click, that's how you kind of like pull it away. Hopefully that makes sense. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the inside of the house. I started off by like the little initial entrance hallway. I popped down a little side table, and then you would have seen on the side table I tried to make some sort of reference to the uncle being a mechanic, and so I placed down a little measuring tape by the front door. Maybe it's something that he always would grab before he runs off to go to work on the morning. So I placed down a little measuring tape, and then also a little basket with his phone, and then also front door keys. But now moving over, you can see that I've now moved on and I've started decorating the dining room. Now the approach that I had for the furnishing and the way that I was going to decorate the inside of the house, I didn't want it to be all super matchy. I wanted it to be nicely decorated, but I didn't want to go too much overpowering with like the clutter and stuff, and so I tried to do the clutter a little bit minimal-ish, and then I also just tried to use objects that I just feel like are just regular day objects. Like, for example, the dining room table, I made it so one of the chairs looks like it's been kind of recently sat on, and then someone's got up and kind of haven't pushed their chair back in. I will say, when I was playtesting, that is one of the only things that wasn't usable in this house, because the chair isn't attached to the table, but I feel like that's a little bit of a given. If you want to and you want to make it so it is usable, you could always just reattach the chair. But for the realistic purposes, I placed down a little coffee mug and then also a open book. By the way, I always picture in my head that little open book is just a newspaper, and I was thinking that maybe, again, before the uncle goes off for work in the morning, he might have a cup of coffee and read the daily newspaper or something. I really wish in The Sims 4 we would get newspapers back in the game, because I'm not sure if you ever played The Sims 3, but it was something that we had in The Sims 3, and it's a small little detail, but I used to love it, because if you're not familiar, every single day a paper kid used to come to your Sim's house and they used to throw a newspaper by the front door. And it's actually really funny, because after a duration of time, if your Sims hadn't bothered to either cancel the mail service and that they've just kind of like left all the different newspapers piling up, the paper kid would actually get the ump, and then you'd get like a little notification from the kid itself saying, I'm not delivering your paper anymore. Like, you ain't picked up yesterday's mail or the day before. So basically, they don't say this, but basically, sod you, I'm not giving you any more newspapers. And it's just something that I really wish that we could get back in The Sims 4. That and burglars. Even though the burglar sound used to absolutely petrify me, and probably would still petrify me even though I've grown up now, but I wish that we could have, yeah, newspapers back in the game, and also burglars, which is a complete tangent of what I want in the game. But besides the point, either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the kitchen. So in the kitchen, I decided to go for these base game counters in this brown colour swatch, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever used this swatch of this kitchen counter before. I feel like I'm maturing in a way, because I have always been someone, and I've been very vocal about it, but The Sims 4 has this colour swatch of like an orangey browny wood, and I have said many times that I am not a massive fan of it. Do you know what, recently I feel like I'm maturing, because I'm actually starting to like it, and it's great, because that means that there is so many more decorations and so many different objects and furniture pieces that I can now start to use, because it's really started to grow on me. But yeah, this kitchen counter is just from the Sims 4 base game. The back of it has this like orangey wood tone, and normally I'd be like, no, not my cup of tea, but yeah, no, I feel like I've matured a bit, and I decided to use it in this kitchen. But as well in this kitchen, I decided to place down a base game oven, and then also a fridge that we got from the Home Chef Hustle stuff pack. Now, I decided to use a washing machine in the kitchen. Originally, by the way, the plan was to have a little tiny utility room just off the kitchen, and there'd be like washing machine and then tumble dryer in there. But then when I was building, I thought I'll just pop it down into there, just, you know, just so I know that I want to place that in there. But then I realised when I placed it down into the little separate, what I was thinking was going to be the utility room, the window then started clipping in to them, and so I thought I don't really want that to happen, because it kind of annoys me. And so I thought, well, why don't I move it? So the washing machine is, yeah, in the kitchen. There is a washing line outside, so if your Sims want to, they can dry all of their clothes in the sunshine in the summer months. But in case it is winter or like autumn in your game, I do also end up placing down a dryer upstairs, just for, honestly, practicality purposes. But yeah, I placed down a little washing machine in the kitchen. The way that washing machine works, your Sims unfortunately can't use it as a counterpiece, but I did make sure to leave at least one empty counter space in this kitchen. And when I was playtesting, my Sim made their dinner on kind of like the kitchen island bit, and so it still is fully functional, this kitchen. Also placed down a little microwave as well as a kettle, and then also, you would have just seen, I just finished up placing down some mugs, kind of like dangling off a pole by the kitchen sink. I just wanted there to be somewhere where your Sims would kind of like keep all of their coffee mugs and tea mugs and stuff. And this is something that I've done in a few different builds, and it took me so long because I've done it previously before in the past. But basically the way that you do it is you get a curtain rod. The one that I've used is from the modern Luxe Kit, but there's probably a few different things that you could use. I just always use this curtain rod, but I got the curtain rod, I elevated it down because by default it naturally just kind of like clips quite high up to the ceiling. I elevated it down and then sized it down a little bit, and then I got these mugs and I basically rotated them to make it look like they were hanging off the rod. Now, for the life of me, when I was building, I couldn't figure out the degrees that I needed to rotate it, and so you would have seen I did decide to kind of like skip through the painful process of me experimenting with all the different rotation angles in the game, because it just, yeah, it took me an embarrassing amount of time. I had to cut it out. But I basically rotated some little coffee mugs hanging off the curtain pole. But also in this room as well, there is some sort of like storage for extra pots and pans and stuff. And then I also, at this point, thought it might be quite nice if this household has a dog, and so I placed down a little shelving unit by the back door that's got like dog collars and then also a dog lead hanging off it. And then I thought, well, maybe the uncle has quite a big dog, and maybe it's one of them dogs that you could take to work. Personally, I was picturing a golden retriever or that kind of dog. I just imagine that this dog is such a good dog and can be very social, and so yeah, I was thinking the idea of every single day when the uncle goes to work, he's got such a good relationship with the dog that he trusts the dog to come to work with him, and he can maybe have the doors open in this mechanic workshop that he works in, or maybe potentially owns, and the dog just, you know, lay on a little pet bed in the corner or something. I imagine that the dog is probably like the uncle's best friend or something. But quickly, before I actually move over and tell you a little bit more about the storyline, I did just want to mention something in this little bathroom which I'm decorating over here. So this is what I was thinking would be the utility room, but the washing machine and the tumble dryer, they just kept on clipping in. But in that little bathroom, I placed down at the very end a kind of like bathroom cabinet on the other side of where the toilet is. When it came round to gameplay, that was the only other thing that I ran into an issue with. The first issue being my Sim couldn't sit on the seat in the dining room that I kind of like pulled out, which is kind of a bit of a given anyway. But yeah, that little bathroom cabinet was a little bit too close to the toilet, and so I did decide to delete it. But honestly, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It's literally just a little bathroom cabinet. But either way, moving over, you can see that I've now started coming in and decorating the lounge room. In the lounge room, I decided to go for the sofas that we got from the Seasons expansion pack, the 2-seater ones, and then match it with an armchair that we got from the Basement Treasures kit. Now, in terms of the family that I imagine that live in this house, I was thinking as I was decorating that this, even though I imagine it to be an uncle who is raising his nephew, I was thinking at first they're quite low income, but then I was thinking, hang on, like, it's actually quite a decent sized house. Like, I don't exactly imagine that they're scrimping and scraping every single month to, you know, pay the mortgage or whatever. And so I had the idea that maybe the uncle came from quite a middle class-ish family, had a little bit of money, and maybe used to have a really good relationship with his sister, and maybe he used to live in the house with his sister and his nephew in like earlier years. I then had the idea of, okay, well, why is the nephew living with his uncle? You know, like, what happened to this family? What happened to their parents? I had the idea that the teenage boy that will be living in this house with his uncle, he has never really had a relationship with his dad. I imagine that his dad was probably someone that was very flaky from the get-go and probably has never seen him that much in his life, probably only seen him a handful of times. And so he's got a really sour relationship with his biological dad. But then I imagined that his mum probably used to live with her parents, and so, you know, growing up he lived with his mum, his nan, his granddad, and then also his uncle. But then unfortunately, and it sounds so sad, but I want there to be a little bit of depth to this storyline, I imagine that maybe there was some sort of house fire, and unfortunately both of the teenager's grandparents and then also his mum were in the house at that time. Him and his uncle were out maybe at like a local fair or something and weren't a part of the fire, and they came home and their house burnt down, and then also their family members passed away in the process. Honestly, it's so sad, isn't it? Now, from the back of this, I was then thinking it could quite work nicely for a storyline purpose, because this house isn't exactly, even though I tried to make it feel low income, and like I said, like trying to decorate this neighbourhood in particular of Willow Creek, I want it to be less fancy houses. It's still, current day, if you wanted to buy this off Rightmove, easily 400,000, like easily, like this is quite a decent sized house. But I was thinking, well, from off the back of that, maybe the uncle and then also probably the nephew as well got some sort of inheritance. There was no one left in their family to give anything to, and he was next in line in the family will, and so he got a ton of money from basically what his mum and dad owned, maybe what his sister owned as well, or maybe what his sister owned kind of like then went towards the teenager, and maybe the teenager has quite a hefty savings account and maybe he's got quite a lot of money. But I was thinking that, yeah, they got some inheritance money and they decided to probably move worlds. I was imagining that they were probably from maybe like Brenton Bay or maybe Windenburg or something, but they wanted to downsize a little bit. Well, to be fair, their house burnt down anyway, so they couldn't really still live in it, but they decided to move worlds, and they decided to move into this little house in Willow Creek. Now, I was thinking, where the teenager had previously been living with his uncle anyway, I feel like he would be a little bit of like a father figure to his nephew. Like I said, I imagine that the teenager has next to no relationship with his biological father. I will be making him, and he'll be somewhere in the world. I don't know whether he'll be having a family of his own or whether he'll just be a little bit of just like a random sim that might generate into like the nightclub sometimes, and just like a random townie. But I will make the dad as well, and I'm going to make it so the uncle of his household hates him, because I'm thinking that he probably saw his poor sister have to go through the process of becoming a new parent and being a parent all by themselves. They obviously did help out, like his mum and dad, the grandparents of the nephew, of course obviously helped out as well, but he probably hates the teenage son's biological dad, and so I just thought that'd be a really fun dynamic to have in my save file, just to have the uncle absolutely hate the biological father of the teenager that he's now the caregiver of. And I imagine that growing up they've always just been really close, and now it's just them two. In terms of their personalities, the teenager, I've actually now moved on and started decorating his room. I imagine that even though he has a window that he could, if he wanted to, sneak out of a night time, he's actually someone that is, to be honest, just quite a good kid. For the storyline purpose, I thought it would be quite interesting to kind of flip the stereotype roles. And what I mean by that is normally I would have the role of like teenager be quite, rebellious and quite naughty and always sneaking out and stuff, and then the parent is quite maybe strict and that kind of stereotype of a family dynamic. But I thought for this household I really didn't picture that. I actually picture that the uncle is more of the outgoing, more sociable type, whereas the teenage boy just keeps himself to himself, really. I was thinking he wants to one day grow up and go to university, and he wants to go to the Foxbury Institute that we got from the Britechester world. Is kind of like a more modernised university than the Britechester one. Now, I was thinking for this university in particular, it would be more suited to this sim, because you'll see I end up placing down some like little robot decorations in this room, as well as some mechanic like wall decorations and then like some space posters. And so I was thinking that maybe one day he wants to grow up and go to the Foxbury Institute and do a distinguished either computer science degree or then potentially a physics degree, like one of them two. Like, I just felt like that would really match the way that I decorated this room. So maybe he wants to grow up and also become some sort of mechanic like his uncle, but instead of being like a car mechanic, I was thinking that maybe he wants to work with computers and be a computer mechanic, if that makes any sense. But you'll see I had a little bit of a debate with myself, because I placed down this little triangular flag above his computer desk. Now, the Foxbury Institute's colours are, I think, red and orange. It's definitely red, whereas the University of Britechester, the more like old English architecture uni, their colours are green. And I had a debate myself, because the way that I decorated this room, the flag matched so much better in the green swatch, but it's kind of like referencing the University of Britechester, which is not the uni that I imagine that he could go to. Of course, he could still do them 2 degrees at the University of Britechester, but I just feel like to go to a distinguished degree, he's probably really smart, and so he could probably get into the better degrees at the more modernised university. And so I placed down this little flag above his computer desk, and yeah, I initially placed it down and I was like, no, it needs to be red, because that's the university that I imagine that he wants to go to. But then I was like, well, no, but the green actually kind of looks better. And so it does kind of like conflict with the law of The Sims. Maybe he doesn't even want to do a distinguished degree, or maybe he doesn't even want to go to university, or perhaps it is just a decoration for something else that isn't the university. But I did just want to mention that I did pick up on it when I was decorating, because I wanted to keep with the law of The Sims 4 and kind of keep with like the law in the game. And if I wanted him to go to the Foxbury Institute, he's got the rival university's colours in his room. But just something that I wanted to point out, because you'll see I do like debate with myself a few times. Like, I keep on revisiting that flag and like changing the colour, because it was just annoying me. But something else that I wanted to mention in this room, I purposely didn't place down anything in front of the window that your Sims can climb in and out of, because for gameplay purposes it will completely block it. But then I was thinking, well, I might just pop down a little armchair into his room, because like I said, I don't imagine that he would sneak out. He probably doesn't even have to sneak out. I imagine that his uncle is so laid back, and he's probably the type of character that would kind of urge him to go out and do all these kind of like teenagery things. It's I just want to stay in my room and watch a film or read a book or research about space or whatever. And so even though I did block that little window in the room, I did play test it. I removed the armchair, and your Sims can still get in and out and then go downstairs via that window. But just for the way that I wanted the room to look, it felt very empty and very bare without the chair there. And so yeah, I did decide to include a little armchair in his room. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the uncle's bedroom. Like I said, I do imagine this uncle to be quite outgoing. I feel like with the job that he's got, I feel like he probably talks to people on the daily, and so I imagine that he's someone that is very sociable. Like I said, I imagine that his dog is like his best friend, but I mean, you can still have a ton of mates and your dog be your best mate. Do you know what I mean? And so I do imagine that he is very close with his dog. I ended up placing a dog bed in this bedroom because I wanted the dog to have somewhere to sleep, and so I pop it into a little bump out in the corner. But in this room, I placed down a walk-in wardrobe that we got from the Get Together expansion pack, and then a base game bed, because for the way that the floor plan for this bedroom worked out, there wasn't really the best place for the bed to be if you wanted to get either side. And I do imagine that sometimes the uncle would pop to the bar after work and maybe bring home someone. And so I wanted them to have both access to either side of the bed. And so, yeah, I just placed down a base game bed underneath the window. But other than that, I'm going to go around this build, finish it off by decorating the hallway. And that is pretty much it. So anyway, guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or you can search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys!